In this video, I'm going to show you how to clean a carburetor for a chainsaw. Some reasons why you might clean a carburetor would involve, after you've checked your spark plugs, spark arrestor, fuel filter, and air filter. If those are all in good shape and you've checked those out, you've tried readjusting the carburetor by tacking it, changing these screws here. And if for some reason after all of those it still doesn't want to idle at a steady speed, or the high rev doesn't work well, you might have a carburetor issue. So first thing you would do is probably go for cleaning a carburetor to see if that works, and if that doesn't work, you might just need to replace the carburetor, or you might just have a different problem. But in this video we'll go over cleaning a carburetor. To start, you're going to remove the carburetor from the chainsaw. It's good to have a nice clean working surface. A couple of tools you might need: a little tack driver, iPro, rubber gloves, and a can of carbon choke cleaner. So let's get started. The first thing we'll do is take off the screws on this top plate. And once you take off those screws, you'll have two gaskets on the inside. This little plastic one right here. You want to check to make sure there are no holes or rips in it, but you can see this is pretty dirty, so we'll set it aside and clean it later. And then you've got this rubber gasket, and you want to be careful when peeling this off the top plate, because sometimes it doesn't want to come off very easily. So if it doesn't want to come off, that's fine. You can probably leave that on and just clean it all together. Then if you look carefully on the inside here, there's a little mesh screen, and that needs to be cleaned well. Make sure it's not clogged up, and it is fairly clean, so I won't worry about trying to pull it out and clean it. But you could pop that screen out, clean it off, and then put it back in, no problem. On the other side, you've got another plate. Just scrape it off first, clean it off a little bit. Now on this side, you got 4 more screws, and we'll pop those off. Pop that off, you'll have a metal top plate and this diaphragm gasket. And with the diaphragm gasket, you want to check this center pin right here to make sure it's not too worn out. If it is, you'll have to get a gasket set replacement kit to replace that. And inside here, you want to check to make sure all of this whole mechanism here works. Make sure that springs back up when you push down on it. Make sure the fork on this is not too worn out. And if you want to, you could unscrew this pin, take all of these parts out, and check them to see if they're in good working condition. So let's go ahead and do that. So with this part of the carburetor, there's lots of tiny little delicate parts, so just be careful not to lose them all. There's one right there. You have a little spring, the screw that holds everything together, one rod, and this needle pin right here. So those 5 parts Sometimes this needle pin can wear out. Be sure not to lose those. And that's about all you can strip down on the carburetor. Pretty much what you're going to do now is take this can of carburetor and choke cleaner, and you're going to basically spray off everything inside of this carburetor. You could spray down here into this port as well, and I'm going to do this outside in a well ventilated area, just because this is a pretty toxic chemical. It's good to wear iPro when you're doing this. Alright. Alright, so here you can see we've cleaned off our carburetor with carbon choke cleaner outside. It's pretty much new. Let's set that aside. Now we've got this plastic gasket right here. We're just going to clean that off with a little bit of Simple Green. And there you can see we've got a clean gasket. Set that aside. This top plate, I'll also just spray a little Simple Green on it and clean it off. Set that part aside. Here's the diaphragm gasket. And finally your last plate. And then these screws you can clean off as well. I'm not going to worry too much about them, just spray them off with a little Simple Green. Alright, so now we've got all of our parts cleaned, and all we've got to do is reassemble all of this. So to reassemble, I'll start with the top. You want to start with your top plate. Put the rubber gasket back on if you took that one off, and then realign your plastic gasket. To make sure you've got it on right, just check to make sure that these pins align. And once you've got those aligned, you can pop it back on top of your carburetor. Put all 4 screws back in. And that's it for the top side. Go to the other side. And this is the bit of a tricky part where we need to reassemble all of these little pieces. Make sure we haven't lost any. So you want to start with your needle pin. Stick that in right here. Drop it in. Then your spring, stick that in right here. And then this is the hardest part. You've got this fork piece that needs to slip underneath your needle pin, and you also have to get that rod across. Once you've got that all in together, hold it down with one finger and get that screw in place. There we go. After you've reassembled all of these parts, you want to test to make sure it works by depressing on this end of the fork and make sure it springs back up. When it does, now you know it's working. You can replace your diaphragm gasket. It fits on like that. And then lastly, your plate. And then all you gotta do is put the 4 screws back in. Once you have those 4 screws in, you now have a clean carburetor.